Welcome back to Reynolds Runabouts, everybody. This is Jeffrey Reynolds. Today I am working on the stripping of this bottom of what's been called the 1960 Mystery Boat. Well, today I'm taking the paint off, and just a little history of what we got. We've got a darker blue, a teal, and then we have a copper bronze, and then we have a white. And then it looks like a primer white. So that seems to be the original color is this white, and there's a little primer underneath it. The bottom overall on this side, at least the starboard side, is in pretty good shape. Like the wage maker I did in the last project, it has cracks along these timbers, and this is a it's a plywood molded hull with then laps or strakes glued in heat in the oven as well. So like the wage maker, which U.S. Molded Shapes was part of that company, it's a lot like it. It does have wider strakes, so that makes it easier for me to use my orbital with 80 grit. Last boat I did, I used a combination of a stripper on one side, and then I went to the heat gun on the other, and the heat gun ended up being my method of choice. Left a lot of chatter marks, which I had to go back and sand out anyways with both hand sander and with a little mouse detail sander. So I'm thinking this might be easier to just go at it with the orbital and then just tip it slightly. When I get into the concave strakes, if I tip it, I'm able to get that contour that I want, and I just let it ride with some control, and I just feather it depending on the angle I need to achieve. Out here I had both flat and then convex, which you have to be careful, for other reasons. Out here I found the original colors and score marks for what I'm calling the boot stripe. So this boat originally was white bottom, gold boot stripe, and then black. And it looks like the black went all the way up to the sheer. So the sides of the boat were black. They're currently finished bright, meaning stain and varnish. And that was done by the previous restorer and the last owner of this boat. We know that from his widow. And I had seen pictures of it in his shop. So he was the one, I believe, that put either the teal or the dark blue. I'm thinking dark blue. So the owner has not made a decision on the color choices he would like to do for the boat. We might do the white, gold, black with the natural, meaning stained deck and interior, or not. We'll find out later in the restoration. So until then, I'm going to get back to stripping this bottom, and then we can move on to removing the keel from the inside, because the nuts, the bolts the heads are here and the nuts are inside, and it is loose. So I can flip the boat back over and I'll just take the nuts off and save myself the trouble of doing that on the boat. I can do it on my bench and get to these, this garboard plank, we'll call it, a lot easier. So back to work. I finished the sanding of the bottom with 80 grit on my orbital disc sander, and I've exposed most of the fasteners that go through the outside of this hull into keelsons and frames, inner keel, things like that are giving the boat support from the inside, and making like floor supports and other pieces of framing. So I wanted to make sure I could check all of them. What I'll do is before I what I'll do is go in and pop all the fairing compound out of these fasteners, make sure they're tight, and then I'll put them in epoxy with total fair epoxy fairing compound, and then I'll fair it again so it's right down to the wood, because I see a lot of a lot of nicks that I want to focus on, and cracks. And these are planks, so they're pretty thick, and I can still put Smith's penetrating epoxy sealer on it, put the fairing compound on, sand it, and have a pretty tight bottom, give it the wood in the bottom more strength than it has right now, meaning tightening up the wood with some epoxy, keep the water out, fill in some of the cracks, and then put the fairing compound in where it's needed. But otherwise, it's not too bad. There's a few areas where it's probably along the strakes where the trailer hit it, or the bottom of the lake. I mean, it seems to be all on the bottom or in areas up in the bow, maybe where it went onto the trailer, and the strakes kind of lose their 90-degree edge. And I'll work on those when I get to the fairing stage. Right now, I'm going to lift the boat up on my gantry crane. I'm not using my lift system on here because it's just way too much boat. It's too heavy, too wide, and I'm not comfortable with that. So I'm going to lift it up. And then this keel and most of the keelsons have bolts going through, and then there's nuts on the inside. With that member, a keelson or a floor member, I can just open the nut up. And what I want to do is get this keel off first, and then make sure there's no rot, sand it, seal it, finish the bottom. It'll be easier to take this off and then finish this bottom, and then I'll go ahead and rebed it. When I have it all sealed, I'll bed it either with Dolphinite bedding compound or 3M 5200 adhesive. Have to make the decision when I get there. Either one would work. I mean, this looks like a really tight fit with all these fasteners. I think the bedding compound would work great, especially with the Smith sealer on it. It really would give it a lot more protection. And then by then, hopefully we can, the owner can decide on a bottom color that he would like to choose, and we can go ahead and do that. I can also, eventually I'll pull these splash rails off. Again, check them for rot. The one on at least the port side is really dicey whether there's enough there to save, but I'm going to try to save it. Got the paint off, so it looks pretty good. But on the inside, I'm not sure what's going to happen. And then, of course, the transom, as you can see, we looked at this before, has a lot of issues over here that probably were exacerbated by I think the fiberglass cloth was right here. So I think there was a problem somewhere along the line. This corner was damaged or something was happening, so they put a fiberglass patch on there, and then of course it was here as well, but not on the other side. So not sure what happened, but this side has got a lot of problems, the port stern. So again, we're deciding on, me and the owner, deciding what we want to do with the transom. We might just go down 8 inches and take this plywood right out and replace it. That's if we have a natural, well, I'll probably do it anyways because I think the whole bottom edge is a little dicey. If I took the first 8 inches from bottom to top, and there's a beautiful frame system behind this that will support while I pull it out and then put a new piece of plywood in there. Even if it was done varnish, stain and varnish, clear, it would look really good. It would look like a plank, which is nice. Or if we do it with paint, it still would be fine, and we know that the transom has been made good again. So that will come later. I'm now removing the number 10 bolt or fasteners, 2.5 inch, which is about normal. They're silicon bronze, great. It looks like the whole boat was done that way, which is a great sign. These are very tight in the holes, so I'm using a screwdriver, not a driver, to get them out. I do not want to strip out this head, even though I have a Frearson. I'm afraid I'm going to strip it, so I don't want to have to go get those with a screw remover. So what I've been doing is I have a very sharp pick. And what I do is I break that plug. It's a true mahogany plug that the builder put in there, which is nice. It's not too bad. And what I've been doing is I dig it out, and then I have another pick with a hook on it, which allows me to drag that material out without using the outside of the fastener hole as a leverage point, because then it gets all widened out and pretty soon you don't even have a nice hole anymore. Even though this is going to get fairing compound and then painted, I still like to keep the hole the best I can. Then I just hit it with a vac and I clean that out, and then I see where I'm at and I just keep working at it. I've tried, sometimes I'll use a drill, like I have a dull countersink 10 that you can go in there just a bit, but I'm not sure where these are all at, and I don't want to drive into the head when I can just do it with a pick patiently and get the same result anyways. Really, the countersink just takes a little bit of that out. It doesn't really do that much. You still got to go in with the pick and clean out the head anyways to get that, get it cleaned out so you can get the screwdriver into it. So it really doesn't matter in the long run. So I'm going to keep working on those, and I've got several, and then the keel is already, you can tell it's moving. Everything else is fastened through the hull, and then there's a nut on the inside of the hull. This is the only thing, including the spray rails, that are fastened from the outside in. So I'm going to get at getting those out, and then we'll get this keel off, and fingers crossed we don't find any rot or places on the keel that'll have to get replaced. Well, there's the keel off. Two of the bronze fasteners, I just stripped the heads. I couldn't do anything. I figured that's not too bad out of all the brass I had to deal with, or bronze. And there were a couple at the end here that didn't have plugs. It was just filling compound. So yeah, that went well. First impressions. Keel looks good. Don't see any obvious rot. It's a little bit weird up here, maybe at the end, but I think maybe a little bit of epoxy. When I go to put it back on, the original here is a little bit crunchy. So I think this end grain, this looks like white oak. It does have a little bit of rot on the end, which is probably where the water got in. So yeah, I'm real happy with that. Not at all disappointed in that. I think the rest of it probably needs just some fairing compound on the surface. I think that's just wear and tear. But otherwise, the foot and the stem that's part of the mold looks really good, but I expected as much. It's from the factory, it was done really well. So that will allow me now to clean up the rest of this garboard area where the keel was and get that cleaned up, and then I'll go back over the rest of the hull and have the just get it faired out, but also try to figure out what some of these These blue spots are low, meaning there's a crack there probably. So at least an indentation. I'll have to go through and get those cleaned out with a sander, and then I'll go back with my fairing compound, which I think overall, not using the heat gun or stripper and just using my orbital and feathering it into the concave portions really worked out well. So I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to get this cleaned up and see what this hull looks like bare. If you're wondering what I did to get the keel off when I had it stripped, I went ahead with a drill and I found the same diameter drill bit as the hole, these holes, and I went ahead and just went right down on top of it and just got rid of the head. Because it has a bronze head, it's really soft, and most drill bits will do that. And I knew that the screw part was going to be into the boat, so I knew that the shank should be smooth, and it was, and that's why it lifted right off. I have the bottom of the boat now sanded, the preliminary sanding. Got all the fairing compound, or excuse me, the bedding compound out of where the keel rested, and that was, in my best opinion, like a dolphinite type bedding compound, very common even now. And took that out. When you put that bedding compound down, it has an oil in it. It's supposed to stay soft. That's why it keeps the water out. It did not, in my opinion, have any barrier between the wood and the dolphinite. So either the builder didn't put any varnish or anything on the surface of the wood to keep it from wicking that oil down, or it simply dried out. I mean, 1960 was a long time ago. Anyways, it was on there still pretty good. Got it off with some 60 grit on my orbital and got that polished up. Now the bedding compound can go back down once I get the Smith's clear penetrating epoxy sealer on there. That will keep the dolphinite from absorbing, and also the rest of the boat will get it. So what you see here in the white will be gone. I want to go ahead now and get all of the putty out of these fasteners. It looks like it's the original putty. I can see where the restorer, he used more of a modern epoxy filler, so I know where his are. And I'm looking at the originals, and there's enough of them that are cracked that I want to change them all out and put in Total Fair epoxy filler there, because we'll have, you know, more of a synthetic bottom on the bottom. Might as well put some epoxy, get those done. I'm also opening them up just in case I have to release any of them to let the inner support framework loose, so I can get bedding compound under those as well. So a twofold process. I'm going to get these cleaned up and opened up, and then figure out whether I have to release them or not. Hopefully not. I think most of the inner support is supported with through bolts, possibly these, or screws that have nuts and washers. So I'm pretty hopeful. So back to work. Well, I finished the sanding of the bottom and the transom, and I know what the colors were, and I've reported that to the owner, and we're going to come up with a paint scheme. From what I found, the paint, the black, started right about here and went down the whole side. So this was sanded out clear, and it came out pretty nice, which I think that's the goal, is to leave it for now. It will need a scuffing to get it ready for more varnish. I think the natural look is quite nice, to be honest. So we'll figure out what the owner wants to do with colors, but very happy with the bottom. Nothing is concerning me here at all. Just the normal little areas that need some filling, but I think when we put the Smith's we're putting epoxy on this, and then go through the barrier coat paint, and then the bottom paint of choice. I think it'll be quite nice, and keel will go on without too much effort. I'm happy about that. So I'm going to call this episode done, and thank you for tuning in. If you are enjoying the series, please hit the like button. I always love to receive the um, positive feedback, and any comments you might have are always welcome as well. And if you're not a subscriber, please feel free to do that as well. You'll get notifications every 2 weeks on Wednesdays, and that's the plan for you going forward. Even if it is the Wondercraft, it'll be this for the most part. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in 2 weeks.